Hi, this is Charles de Lazarica from the Alien Anthology Blu-ray set, and you are entering the Fanbase.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. This is a special edition of the podcast. We will be doing a Fanbase Feature panel discussion on the recently released film Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. With me, we have a very special group of panelists. We have Ani Pandit, who is a filmmaker, and Steven Spielberg. What would you say? You were a
fan,
super fan, wealth of knowledge, and also Jurassic Park and dinosaur super fan as well. So welcome, Ani.
Thanks, great to be here.
We also have Bryant Dillon, president of Fanbase Press, also Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg, dinosaur aficionado, super fan. So Bryant, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome. I am Barbara Dillon. I am the editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press. I know very little about dinosaurs or Jurassic Park, except that these two guys are the biggest fans I know. So this is going to be a very fun discussion about Jurassic World, about Jurassic Park in general, and all things dinosaurs. So as we often do for these Fanbase Feature panel discussions, I am going to offer a huge spoiler warning. We are going to dive into the themes, the plot points, the characters of the film. So if you have not yet seen the film and you want to do so before learning anything about it, please tune out now and come back once you have seen the film. So away we go. Bryant, why don't you tell us a little bit about Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom?
3 years after the incident at Jurassic World theme park on Isla Nublar, a team of mercenaries arrive on the abandoned island to attempt to collect a sample of DNA from the skeleton of the dead I-Rex, and barely make it out, losing several team members in the attempt. Meanwhile, Congress holds hearings regarding a pending volcanic explosion on Nublar, and whether InGen's dinosaurs should be saved or left to die. When Congress decides not to act, Owen Grady and Claire Dearing are recruited by Jurassic Park creator John Hammond's former business partner and billionaire, Sir Benjamin Lockwood, to save the remaining dinosaurs before the eruption. Owen and Claire make it to the island and help Lockwood's team acquire the dinosaurs they have the ability to save, including the velociraptor known as Blue. But the two former Jurassic World employees are betrayed when they are left for dead on the island as the eruption begins. All life on the island is extinguished, but Owen and Claire and their associates manage to sneak back onto Lockwood's team's ship and head back to the billionaire's estate. There it is revealed that Lockwood's assistant, Eli Mills, has murdered Lockwood and plans to auction off the dinosaurs to the highest bidder. Even more threatening, he has used the I-Rex's DNA to create a velociraptor version of the vicious creature, and plans to use Blue to domesticate and train the next generation of Indoraptors. As one might expect, things don't go as planned, and the Indoraptor escapes, going on a killing spree in the mansion before being killed by Blue. The film ends with multiple dinosaur species escaping into the wild of the mainland, apparently becoming a permanent residence in the modern world. As Ian Malcolm tells Congress in the final moments of the movie, welcome to Jurassic World.
Thank you, Bryant. So for our two panelists, what were your general reactions to Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom? Ani, we will start with you. What did you think of the film?
I was a little underwhelmed.
Okay.
I never felt that the movie actually got started, and I didn't know what to sink my teeth into throughout the film. There were some fun moments, there were some fun set pieces, there were some interesting themes or ideas that showed some potential, but I don't think it ever really came to fruition as a fully baked story.
Okay. Bryant, what about you? What were your general reactions to the film?
I guess I felt in many ways similar to Ani. I did like this film significantly more than Jurassic World, which I just felt was like a very much like a poor rehash of Jurassic Park. This one, being a fan of some of the extended universe around the Jurassic Park mythology, the comics and things like that, I liked some of the ideas that they were playing with, but there were also large sections of the film that just didn't work for me.
Well, let's take it back a little bit further than just Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and even further than just Jurassic World. Were you guys fans of the original three films? Was there one or more that specifically stuck out to you? And do you view these Jurassic World films positively overall, or positive additions to the Jurassic Park property? What are your thoughts, Ani?
To me, they've seemed mostly unnecessary.
Okay.
I'm someone that just liked the first Jurassic Park and never really loved any of the other films that followed, but have watched all of them and will probably continue to watch more as they come. The Jurassic World series to me really has felt like a corporate play, that there's an audience out there and let's just put together some of the elements that we know the previous success has had to try and earn some cash.
Sort of playing on the nostalgia of the property.
Yeah, playing on the nostalgia and maybe like, hey, if these things worked for a generation, maybe they'll work for a new generation. And let's try to make... I haven't really seen any reason, any new ideas or anything to reinvent that would justify the creation of these movies.
Bryant, what about you?
I like almost all the Jurassic Park movies. I can admit that the second and third, Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 are very flawed, but I also look at them as sort of like just other adventures in this world. They're never going to achieve what Jurassic World did, Jurassic Park did, which I think is just at this point, it's sort of like a iconic film. It's going to be a historic film. It has so much beyond just what it is in regards to like technical advancements and cultural phenomenon, that it's almost like Star Wars or something. You know, I would argue in the same way. I don't know that we'll ever get to the level of like Luke, I am your father with Star Wars again. Right. You know, but that doesn't mean I don't want to see other smaller or different adventures. Unfortunately, I do agree, like with Ani. I think a lot of the things that I like that they introduce in either the second and third film or the Jurassic World series are almost like secondary plot elements, and I wish those were the focus. There does seem to be a very, even with Fallen Kingdom, which I like better, they're reminiscent of the films that came before. This one's very reminiscent of Lost World. Jurassic World was very much in the vein of Jurassic Park. And I know we were talking off mic about, I think there's ways to do this kind of thing. I think The Force Awakens did a great job of bringing in a lot of elements from the original film and noting them, but also making it about sort of the cyclical passage of generations and how they change and why they repeat things. I don't think that there's any of that in Jurassic World. There's like in this series, there's no real examination of like, why would we do this park after the first park failed? Are we going against John Hammond's wishes because he pretty much reverses his position post the first film about how he feels about these dinosaurs? And I feel like those are almost swept under the rug just to have more T-Rex saving us, more raptors, more...
Well, going on that idea, let me ask you two questions, and Ani, we'll start with you for the first question. That is, what was it about the original Jurassic Park film that truly, for you, captured your mind and your heart as a film goer? Let's just start there. What was the magic of the film? What really connected with you?
Yeah, well, before I answer that, I think it is... I think Bryant makes a good point where the other movies don't necessarily have to be Jurassic Park again. Because I think, Jurassic Park was the first time we had seen so many things. It was the first time we'd seen such amazing special effects in daylight, which added to a level of, stretched your imagination in a way that just kind of nighttime skulking around didn't allow us to do before. And there was, I think, the classic Spielberg sense of awe and wonder that this is possible in this world, this is possible in this life, and everybody can be childlike in response to something as awesome as these dinosaurs come back to life. And sorry, I think, Bryant, your point is a good one, that the other movies don't have to be that Jurassic Park, but can be other adventures within that same world. And I think of, actually, what that made me think of was the X-Men series, and I think of maybe what X-Men First Class did or Logan did, where they weren't like rehashes of the other X-Men films, but they were just adventures that existed within that world with First Class. Hey, let's take it back to the 60s, play around with style, play around with the look and feel of it, and just give it a very different, fresh perspective. And then with Logan, of course, it's just its own standalone beautiful film that still sits within the X-Men universe. I don't feel like any of the Jurassic World films ever tried to accomplish that. I think, like you said, they just went back and tried to rehash it. So you're almost forced to then compare it with the original, but it's never going to sit with the original because the impact of the original is dependent on the context that it was released in, where we'd never seen anything like that before.
And then for both of you, what is the drive, given that you, and Bryant, perhaps you're a little more positive on the films overall following Jurassic Park,
Sure.
but what would you say is it that drives you continuously to give a chance to these films? Is there something about the original and about playing in that sandbox again that appeals to you, that perhaps it can be something new but within that same world? Or is there something else that drives you to keep giving chances to these films?
I love there's something obviously just childlike about having velociraptors and a Tyrannosaur that I remember from the original films on screen. And they can do really cool stuff, I think, with some of these dinosaurs. It's not always, I would say, the best CGI in the world. Sometimes I'm disappointed in it. But the films have several moments. Even like I know we were talking about Jurassic Park 3 the other day, and how there's this really cool moment where they have the pterodon come out of the fog, and it's this, it's a throwback to an element that was cut from the first film and was in the book. And there are little pieces like that where I get almost, and maybe this is like, it sounds sort of sad, almost get like that little bit of what I need, from the film. And I want way more, but, there is something there each time. For the Jurassic World films, what I've really latched on to is, even though it's not depicted exactly the way I want, the concept of a trained velociraptor and a relationship between a human character and a dinosaur, I think is the right way to go. They did this in the comics, where instead of making it sort of a rehash of the park, Grant and Ellie and some of the other characters were pursuing a number of raptors who had escaped the island. They had been abducted and then got into the mainland, and Ellie had helped heal one velociraptor that had been injured while it was in captivity. So there was this somewhat of a connection that was formed with it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is it sort of takes me on a tangent. I'll try not to make it too much, but there's something there. A lot of people were resistant to this idea of like trained velociraptors, seeing these velociraptors riding or running next to Owen's bike in Jurassic World. And I honestly think that's the one thing out of Jurassic World that is probably the right way to go. It's like, these are supposed to be animals, and if they're animals, it means they're not evil, and they don't kill all the time. They don't just kill to kill. They can be taught. They can have relationships. Any large predator that we have encountered on Earth, I mean, maybe besides something like a great white shark, we can have interactions with or train in some manner. But there's always that edge of like, while we see people, have bonds that carry over from lions or tigers that they've released in a while and see years later, we also see people like, zookeepers. We have Siegfried and Roy, a number of people who've worked with these animals for years, and then something goes wrong too, because it is a wild animal. It's not always predictable. And I think that's the strength. I wish they would have focused more on that, but they seem to have gone, unfortunately, the opposite way, where I think we're at a point with the Jurassic World films where people think of these things as monsters. Mm-hmm.
Well, and Bryant, forgive me, I'm going to stick with you for a moment because I'm not quite getting the answer that I'm looking for.
Sure.
So I want to push a little deeper into that. In that, so I think what I'm hearing from Ani and Bryant, both of you, is that you don't want these films to necessarily just replicate or duplicate what you were seeing in Jurassic Park, the original film. However, without going into the specific plot points of obviously what we are expecting from each film given the trailers that are released, what is it that you are returning for in each film? Are you hoping, without wanting a duplication of Jurassic Park, are you simply looking for that same magic of seeing the dinosaurs on screen? Are you looking for kind of, Bryant, perhaps what I'm taking away from your response is that you're looking for specific explorations of themes or concepts or metaphors, or what is it specifically that, again, not just plot points, but what are you? What am I returning for?
I would say it's a love of the dinosaurs themselves, and I don't think we have another film franchise out there that is in any way even trying to compete with this idea. Sure. There's also, like, I don't know that we can get a better idea or believable reality to merge the modern world with dinosaurs than the sort of the idea of cloning them for this theme park and what happens afterwards. Mm-hmm. But I would say it's also something that's a strength of, I would say, all Spielberg movies. And that's that the cast was so important to the first one. And those characters have carried over. I liked coming back to Ian Malcolm multiple times. Mm-hmm. It was a joy to see him in Fallen Kingdom, even for the little bit that he does. And that's even just, there's the character again, but kind of being able to view these characters as they proceed through the historic, post-Jurassic Park world.
So again, not duplicating, but you like the world that was created.
Yeah,
and
I like the world. I like those characters,
further.
And I would like to see where these things go. I like this sort of Crichton idea of like the misuse of science and disrespect of nature and where that leads us. I don't know that I would say that leads, in my mind, to a world overrun by dinosaurs, but I do think there's a lot of stuff to be mined there that I get a little bit each time. They dig in a little bit, and I keep waiting for them to really go for it.
Ani, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, actually, I want to echo what Bryant had said earlier about them being animals. I think we all know that was Spielberg's very intentional approach to the first film, that these are animals, not monsters. And I think that within I don't know if you want to call it sci-fi, fantasy, but within a film with non-realistic elements, the fact that the creatures we're dealing with aren't aliens, aren't from a different dimension, aren't anything but real animals that existed on this planet is mind-blowing. And I think that creates a different type of excitement when you watch it, the way that you might feel awe looking at footage from the Serengeti in Africa and just can't believe there's such creatures of such diversity and beauty and majesty on this planet. That is true of dinosaurs as well. And I think there aren't many other movies out there where you can play with nature still and bring out as much awe and wonder. So that's something that I always hope that the Jurassic Park movies will bring back at some point, or will be able to successfully execute at some point.
Yeah. And I think that's well said. And with that in mind, are there themes or concepts that you would like to see further explored based on that either you haven't seen in the either Jurassic Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, or the 2 Jurassic World films? Is there anything that was inherent in these films theme-wise, but that perhaps wasn't executed well, or something that hasn't been taken on yet that you would like to see? And feel free to jump in, either of you. Well,
for me, I think I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it on any podcasts, but for me, the biggest thing that has been ignored that I would love to see is when I saw the documentary Blackfish, which is basically about SeaWorld's containment of orcas, and the way that it examined what it does to an intelligent animal to essentially cage them and make them an attraction, especially when it's an animal that travels great distances and can get bored and have depression and things like that. And I guess lots of animals can experience that, but it's really, you can see when you look at intelligence that the more intelligent an animal is or a creature is, the more it needs to have engagement, the more it needs to have love, the more it needs to have some sort of social interaction and freedom to a degree. And so that's the unexplored territory here. I think we've really tapped into, like, hey, what do we do when we as humans misuse our power and we do, stuff, we genetically splice things, or we bring back extinct animals, or we play God. But I think we haven't touched at all on what does it do to these animals that literally have never, we have no idea the length that they traveled. We have some concept through paleontology, but a lot of paleontological research is guessing to a degree, making some educated guesses, but admitting we don't really know X, Y, and Z. We have some ideas, and we can look at animals to guess. But these things are supposed to be as intelligent as a chimpanzee or a dolphin, and especially with the case of the velociraptors, and I have to wonder, isn't there a compelling story to talk about, hey, we have these beautiful creatures that we've brought back to life, and we put them in these little cages so that we can see them, And of course they want to escape. Of course they want to be out in the world. They're animals. And, like, what does it do to a hyper-intelligent animal if it's locked up for long periods of time? You know, like, maybe part of the reason that we think of the velociraptors as so vicious is because we treat them like vicious animals in this movie. And if they were out in, a natural environment, they would be more like a lion in a natural environment or something like that. They could be deadly, but they also could just live. They could just be there, you know? There's a great scene in the end of the Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton where they realize that the raptors are breeding, and they've been breeding for some time, along with other dinosaurs. But they have been encountering the raptors, and they've been incredibly vicious throughout the park. But then they go to this place where they find this, like, cave that they're hiding out in, and they have their nests. And Grant is terrified because he drops down in there, and he's, like, in the dark, and he realizes they're all around him. And they don't attack him. He just kind of, like, shows that he's not a threat, and then he follows them because they hear, like, a boat or a helicopter or something come. They all run out of the cave and stand on the beach and, like, line up in this formation. And he has this realization. He's like, oh my god, they want to migrate. That's their whole thing, is they're looking to migrate. They're following some sort of internal instinct. And it's amazing because you have a book where both, like, there's times where these velociraptors are chasing him down, but there are also times where just, like, he's able to stand next to them, you know? I don't know that we ever get that in the films entirely, you know? It almost seems like they touch on it with Owen and Blue, but it's also like, oh, well, just these two, they have a special relationship or something. And I almost think there's more to explore there.
Ani, what about you? Do you think that they're... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I think for me, I don't think I even realized I missed this, but I think the science of it I miss a lot. Mm-hmm. The first movie had... Yes, of course, they made it very, very simple and generalized for everyone to understand, but still, there were dinosaur experts in the first film, and I wonder if you could really call anybody a dinosaur expert in the other few movies that use any sort of dinosaur expertise. Sure. And that, that's not necessarily that the dinosaur experts knew everything about dinosaurs, but they had important questions, like when Alan Grant realizes they move in herds because he wasn't sure they moved in herds, and there's a sense of wonder in discovering something scientific. There's also questions like, when the velociraptors hatch, like what are the implications if the first people they see is Hammond versus, I know in the book, they had to find ways so that they would see some sort of mother figure initially. Right, yeah. There were problems, and then what happens when corporate interests start to fight against the scientific interests. Again, in the book, Hammond used to walk around with a miniaturized elephant to sort of show off what his genetic engineering could do, but then he never really described that elephant was always sick. It wouldn't ever be healthy.
It was really mean.
It was really mean, and
temperamental.
Different things would change. Exactly.
And I think it died a couple times, and he had it recreated. So it was like sort of this insidiousness of like the process.
Even the frog DNA allowing dinosaurs to change sex. I mean, there was so much about, again, the mysteries of this real world, and it created a way that anybody could also touch the magic of dinosaurs. It created almost an entry point because you could understand them and study them in some way, rather than, oh, you're a billionaire, therefore you have access to scientists and technology, therefore you create dinosaurs. There isn't a more nuanced exploration of the science involved there, which I think would be much more interesting.
There seems to be a continued theme in each movie of corporate greed or of financial viability allowing you to play God, and then the ramifications of that. Do you think that there's a reason that this specific theme keeps being repeated in each of the films? Do you think that perhaps the filmmakers see this as the only way to utilize these characters or this concept? Ultimately, what is the reason that we keep revisiting this same concept?
Well, it's sort of integral to the DNA of Frank, to not make a pun, to the DNA of Crichton's original idea, I think, because the only legitimate reason he could see for creating these dinosaurs, people that would have the money, is people that would profit from them. And I would say that, again, like the stuff that Ani is talking about and some of the things I'm talking about, it ties into that overarching theme of, like, how these animals are viewed. What do you view a cloned animal as? You know, and I remember there were some fascinating discussions in the first novel by Crichton about like what rights does a genetically created animal have, or is it considered property? And these are things I feel like are only not being dove into, like they're being slightly included because they are part of the story. You almost can't escape them, but they're not dived into in the way that, say, like a film like something like Blade Runner 2049 recently dove into, or even some of the Alien series, which could go even further, I would say. But there's something here where they don't feel that the general audience will be as interested in this complex discussion, I think, about like what are the ethics behind this science? How do we ethically decide what to do? And they did some of that in this film. I really liked posing this idea, especially through Malcolm, who's sort of a hero to many of us, saying like, hey, maybe these dinosaurs need to die. Like this was a wrong decision, and this is a course correction from nature, and we should not get involved because it fights against your sympathies, your empathy for these animals. You're like, I don't want to see these animals killed by lava. I don't want to see them killed in any way. But there's definitely a morally gray area of like, well, was it wrong for them to exist in the beginning? And I don't know that will ever be explored the way it could be in a big blockbuster film.
Ani, what are your thoughts on that?
I think some of it might be laziness, that they're repeating the same themes over and over again. I also, not to get too philosophical, but I think that we are just in a very commercialized society, a very materialistic society, and the politics of our filmmaking or the thought process behind our filmmaking is also very, very commercial, to the point that we have to look at everything as the only natural way to look at things is, what is the profit to you? Mm-hmm. What is the profit of this dinosaur to you? Is it because you get to go on cool tours and see them? Is it because they're cute and they make you feel warm and fuzzy things? Is it because they are war machines? Is it because they bring you revenue because other people will come and pay your park entrance fee? I think, that was a theme that was handled delicately in the first film because it was presented in contrast with other values, with the value of nature, with the value of science, whereas now it's just sort of a go-to. Everyone sadly just kind of understands it, that greed would be a big motivating factor, and you don't even need to contrast it with anything. It's just a very easy shorthand for good guy, bad guy, and of course it makes sense, because of course people will be thinking about things just in the context of how it profits them.
Well, Ani, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. After this message, we're going to return to talk a little bit more deeper about this specific film, since we've been talking generally about the Jurassic Park universe, as it were. So we are going to take a brief break, and we will be back for part 2 after this message.
Greetings, listeners. This is Bryant Dillon from Fanbase Press, and I'm here to let you know that in addition to our podcasts and website, Fanbase Press is also a publisher of comic books, graphic novels, and other fine media. Horror comic book fans need look no further than Fanbase Press to satisfy their darkest desires. Something Animal, the Fanbase's premier graphic novel, is a bold, visceral, and unflinching take on the vampire genre. After witnessing his sister's brutal murder, Jack struggles to cope with the disturbing psychological aftermath. Tormented by images of the attack, Jack finds himself physically ill and unable to eat, scared and alone. He is forced to confront a growing thirst for blood and the harsh reality that either his sanity is quickly crumbling or that he is turning into something else. Something dark. Something animal. Famous Monsters of Filmland says Something Animal managed to tap into terror in a way I haven't seen since Alan Schwartz's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And popular geek news website Geekscape.net says something animal is not your cookie-cutter comic or standard graphic novel. Help support the giveaways, podcasts, and other free content we provide every day here at Fanbase Press by purchasing a copy of Something Animal or one of our other awesome graphic novels at the Fanbase online store today. Visit fanbasepress.com today and click on the shop link to secure the ultimate in indie graphic novel horror.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for this Fanbase Feature panel discussion on Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. We have Ani and Bryant here discussing the film with us.
And Barbra.
I'm not discussing the film. I have nothing to share about this film. But it's fascinating to hear your take on this, given your love of dinosaurs and of the Jurassic Park
Jurassic
universe.
Pork is
Jurassic
right.
Pork. That's coming out to a theater near you this fall. So let's dive into this specific film a little bit more. I'm curious because we have been speaking more broadly about dinosaurs and their depiction on film and of the Jurassic Park mythos. This specific film does continue that conversation of the hubris of scientific advancement, with playing God in particular being a part of that. In this one, we have the introduction of not only genetically altering dinosaur DNA, but of genetically altering human DNA for the purpose of cloning.
For the purpose of motivating a third act
A weird
decision.
B plot. So I'm curious, what were your thoughts on? We'll take it in two parts. What were your thoughts on the introduction of yet another genetically engineered dinosaur, and also the introduction of human genetic engineering? Ani, we'll start with you.
To me, a lot of the themes were a mess. I think they were introduced and then never really resolved or complicated in any way, or lazy. So, first we start with the question of, okay, are these dinosaurs animals? Mm-hmm. And if they are animals, they're an endangered species, and should they be treated as an endangered species? Should we save them or not? But what's weird is we are saving the endangered species from an act of nature, mm-hmm. which is the volcano. Traditionally, species are endangered because human action has whittled down their numbers. But that never gets really explored anywhere. But then, again, they're going to die now towards the end because of human action, because they've been confined and there's a poison gas that happens to be leaking. So do we, again, intervene to save them from a human action? But again, these were kind of muddled and never really explored in any way. And then I thought the reveal of the granddaughter as the daughter's clone was almost like, it took me a minute to put together, and then I had to laugh a little bit because it was just so extreme, such at the last minute, and a huge thematic point that is totally glossed over, and again, just used in that moment because she feels she's a clone. She suddenly has a stronger emotional reaction to the dinosaurs and then wants them to be free, because you would imagine she would also want to be free herself. So I think it was used just as a plot point, but also brought back, I think, an issue that I had throughout the movie of, we only care about animals, again, when they are of profit to us or when they make us feel warm and fuzzy in some way. Mm-hmm. I think everything with Blue, like, oh, she's just like a pet. She's nice. Oh, the brachiosaur, the friendly vegetarian dinosaur, is dying on the dock. Every other dinosaur is a monster, and we want to run away from them and hope they get shot at or killed. But I don't know. There always has to be a...
Let me throw something out to you.
Yeah.
I know I'm taking us on a little bit of a diversion.
I was going off on
but no, it was all good. But I hear very similar thoughts in your mind, and I wonder. I've always believed that Lost World should have, like, we have this whole incident where a tyrannosaur is let go on the mainland and runs rampant mm-hmm. through, San Diego,
mm-hmm. or Burbank,
if you know where it's filmed. But people die. There's humor. It's a very Spielberg-esque set piece where it's just like, there is terror, but there's also like a lot of like humor and character. And they get to a place eventually where they almost the music sort of goes sympathetic, and they like trank the dinosaur before anyone can kill it, and it gets closed and sent back to the island. And there's part of me that feels like that's kind of one of the turning points that we lost. I almost feel like what you're sort of feeling, and similar to me, is like it's almost like they needed to kill that dinosaur to make us feel bad. For like, we brought this dinosaur here, and like there's no other way to deal with it at this point. But we need to suffer in some ways to feel bad because we've brought this animal into an environment it's not able to be in, and it's causing harm to other humans, and we have to put it down. But there's a responsibility of like, we're killing this glorious, unseen creature. And I feel like that's part of the problem, that they never... It's almost like that's what they need to do in some ways to get us to see us as animals. They need to kill some of these dinosaurs on screen, which I don't think they want to do in that way, but they need to do it not in a like sort of Aliens kind of like, oh, we killed the enemy. It needs to be this thing where there's a real loss to having to do that. I remember, again, a specific incident in the comics where Grant and Muldoon, who has come back from the dead in this comic, but they're having a debate about these raptors. Muldoon is very much of the idea of like, these raptors don't belong here. They need to be killed. We need to put them down when we see them. And Grant's like, you can't do that, But he's put in an incident where like one of the raptors is about to attack Ellie, and he ends up shooting it and killing it, and then feeling horrible for the rest of the series about it. And I guess what I would pose to you, Ani, is like, do you think that, would you agree that would help, or am I kind of like going kind of direct?
Well, before I answer, do you think they kind of tried to do that with the brachiosaur burning on the deck?
I think they got close. Like, I actually loved that shot. I thought it was really, it had this feeling of like, we did this. This animal, for me at least, the way I read that was, this animal is only dying because we created it and then handled everything irresponsibly. And now we can't get them all off the island. And so I have to sit here and watch on this island while this majestic animal is overcome or overrun by flame and smoke. And I felt the same when the animals kind of toppled off the side of the cliff, because like at first it's just a big action set piece, but then when you're like watching them like drown, I think they could have hit it a little bit harder, because I think they kind of cut away.
The execution wasn't there. Like I feel like they sketched out the idea and just sort of assumed, hey, you should feel bad for these animals. But anytime you see big animals going down, I mean, an elephant being taken down or something like that, it's a clumsy, slow, painful process, because you can see how real it is. And I totally agree with you. I think if they had come up with ways to take down these animals in a clumsy, big, slow way that really hurt, I think it would have been very, very
well, effective. They try to do it in Lost World a little bit with you see them like grabbing and grappling and like pulling them to the ground, but it's still this, they don't have the, whatever reason, whether it's Spielberg or the other filmmakers, they don't have the guts, I want to say, to go all the way with it. They're afraid to kill a dinosaur and make everyone feel bad.
Well, I think that's the point, and Ani, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think that they're not willing to force or to put audiences in a place where they have to feel the negative repercussions of the actions of the people in the film. Obviously, we're going to be put in the place of the humans in the film, because that is our shared perspective. We are the humans. We are the people. Yeah. And even though we see the hubris and the capitalism, as it were, put in play over and over and over again of, well, we are the humans, we are put in a place where we have to play God, whether it's playing God in creating the animals, whether it's playing God in saving them from nature, whether it's saving them from the toxic, whatever chemical it was, the gas at the end of the film. We are always put in a place where, as humans, we are more superior and have the power to save or create. And I wonder if perhaps filmmakers or studios are unwilling to put us in a place that is meant to make us feel uncomfortable. And it's not only a power of creating or deciding whether something lives or dies, but the repercussions of that, and what the actions are, and the recurrences from that, and how we're meant to feel from that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that that they are using these broad strokes because, you know, I'm sure there's an argument that this is a summer movie and we shouldn't make anyone think that much and feel that much. Which, I don't know, I think there's still a middle ground you can accomplish. And I think actually having themes that resonate makes the movie that much more entertaining and that much more emotionally fulfilling. But yeah, I think there's probably a show as many dinosaurs as possible, show as many set pieces as possible. Which, again, you can't fault. It is a money-making enterprise, but yeah, I agree. I don't think there's an appetite for a lot of deep exploration of themes.
Well, I've seen a couple critics review for this film is like essentially like, the dinosaurs are back, but the fun is gone. And that's weird because I like the dark nature of this film. I kind of liked a little bit of the darkness we got in Lost World. Neither one has been executed as I would want it to, but there's part of me that goes, I think there is that worry. They're like, these films are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be about dinosaurs. They're supposed to be adventures. If we go too dark, we're going to lose some of the audience. They're not going to have fun. But then I would say, like, whether you're looking at something as recent as Avengers Infinity War, which was both hilarious at moments and horribly, like, emotionally affecting at moments, or you look at something even more Spielbergian, like the Indiana Jones series, they go very dark places at times, you know, and it's not that the adventure style can't handle that. It can. It's just what you're willing to tell, and I do think maybe it goes even all the way back to Spielberg, you know, who lightened the character of John Hammond, who made two films that have sort of a hopeful ending of like, hey, here's the dinosaurs and the music swells, you know, like it almost feels like that's the path to success that's been set, and they're unwilling to break that. You know, they don't want to end on a dour note. This film is about as dour, I think, as they're going to get, where it's sort of like, hey, what's going to happen next? You know, but I don't know that they're willing to kind of go like, hey, this is sad. You know, like the end message is like, we're not good people, maybe. You know, like.
I'm just going to put this random thought out there to hear your feelings on it. Did anyone at any point in this film, in the second or third act, think that the little girl was combined with dinosaur DNA? Yes, I really did.
I did not think that. I had heard that was, I had read that as a spoiler. And there were a few moments where I felt the camera...
The cinematography, I think, made you anticipate that.
In the beginning, she, like, runs across the screen like a potential dinosaur.
And I don't know if you noticed this, at one point, she came through a door and her hands were like this. And I was like, please don't do that. Please don't tell me that she's, like, wrapped in DNA.
Maybe they needed to plug holes in the human DNA with
we plugged it with raptor DNA.
Yeah.
And for those who can't see it, because this is audio only, my hands are in raptor hands, because I don't know why she felt the need to walk into a room that way. But,
I guess the weird thing is, I actually really liked the revelation about the little girl. I know a lot of people feel really iffy about it, but I thought it was a unique... like, they did it just right for me, where it was like, oh, we didn't obsess over it, we didn't make her part dinosaur. But also it served as a legitimate reason, I think, like, not that you had to write this in, but at least made me go, okay, I can see why there is another guy who worked with Hammond and we haven't heard about him, and they like sort of diverted after this. This seems like a strong enough thing where I can believe that this guy missed his daughter so much that he used the power he had to bring her back, and that was something that even for Hammond, he was like, what the hell? Like, no way. And, you know, like, I think the timeline's a little wonky. You have to assume that he maybe said he was going to do this and didn't do it to years later, you know? But
failed multiple times.
Or maybe, failed multiple times. That could be something, too. I mean, there are ways they could have done that, I think, a little bit better, but I hesitate. It's kind of like the Raptors running with the motorcycle, where I go, it's not as much the problem of the concept as maybe the execution. The concept is kind of solid. The idea that someone who has this power might use it for personal means, and that might divide a business partnership, or even just the revelation of this little girl realizing that she's not a granddaughter, is kind of powerful, you know? But when they try, you know, like, I agree with Ani, when they try to, like, tie it into her feeling empathy for this dinosaur, these dinosaurs only work so far. You know, it seems a little bit forced in that department. So.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe again this is showing my age and I need slower movies, but the fact that there were almost like 4 potential movies in this one. There's the like, do we get them off the volcanic island or not? That could have been an entire movie. There's, do we sell them as war machines or not? That could have been an entire movie. Oh crap, we cloned a human and her relationship now is complex with all of these. She feels a kinship with all of these cloned dinosaurs. That's another movie. And then completely unnecessary, the Indoraptor is another movie.
Indoraptor.
Yeah, which is just like, hey, that was already the last movie. So yeah, I don't know if it's because of that we were never able to get into any of those themes with enough nuance or with enough weight.
Yeah, I would say honestly some of the best parts of the film that tackled that were some that were just literally discussions or conversations. I thought there was an interesting conversation about like in the Congress scene about like, you know, whether the dinosaurs should survive. I thought there was an interesting conversation between Claire and Owen at the beginning in the bar where they're kind of like, you're seeing like whether he cares enough about this individual dinosaur to go back. And then I honestly did appreciate, it's very little, but the nuance that we got with the conversation between Mills and Owen and Claire, where he kind of calls them out. And he's like, yeah, I'm doing I'm exploiting this, but you did it as well. How dare you think of your exploitation as good and look at my exploitation as somehow bad? Now, I mean, clearly there's a little more because he's willing to kill people and, you know, to do that. But I feel like that's what I wanted. I wanted more of that.
Well, they did cause death as well.
Yeah, and what I want the film to even, because I feel like there was some of that there, and then it kind of goes away. And I really would like the film to more point a finger at people that maybe we think of as heroes and make them really reconsider their actions, you know, or what responsibility they had in this as well.
Do you feel that there are any larger real world commentaries being made with this film? Or do you think we would be looking far too deeply into this movie to see any real world applications of its themes?
Well, there's some obvious digs at Trump in this film. I don't know why they're there necessarily. I mean, there's the nasty woman line. Yes. Yeah, it feels very like on the nose. There was one thing I did appreciate that's kind of like, because it's kind of an Easter egg, is during the opening like CNN or newscaster scene, there was a little like
BBC.
Was it BBC? All right, there's a little like bar at the bottom with news stories, and one is President questions existence of dinosaurs, which I think is a nice little like in joke.
That's great.
But that's the way I think it should be. I mean, if there's anything that really comments in this film, it's similar things that we've seen in other films as we discussed. It's really, this could be applied to just how we treat our natural world, you know, or animals. And there's a little bit of it, but I think that's about as far as it goes. Like, hey, humans are shitty to the world, and we're getting to the point where the world is going to bite back in some manner.
Yeah, I think it might be unintentional, but goes back to what I was saying earlier of our commercialist mindset, that all we are thinking about and talking about is how do we squeeze some profit out of something, and what profit is it to everyone else, and we just fight each other for our way of profiting off of these animals. And again, the first movie had that as one point and had other counterpoints where Alan Grant, Dr. Malcolm had a lot of philosophical, somewhat spiritual, scientific counterpoints of it isn't just about this is profiting you versus this is profiting me. So yeah, I think that's an unintentional reflection of our commercial mindsets, that all we're thinking about is profit, and that's all the themes of the movie end up being.
Speaking of profitability and commercialism, I would anticipate that there's going to be another Jurassic World film.
Oh, they've already got it planned. Yeah.
Was there a post-credits scene?
There was about
but it was
10
not
seconds.
Worth it. Oh, okay.
It's basically
that's right. It was pterodactyls
on the
in Vegas,
Eiffel Tower, but it's Vegas.
Yeah. So, given my early question about whether you will go and continue to see these films because you were searching for something from these films, will you go and see the next Jurassic World film?
I will if I'm invited to another podcast. No, I mean, I probably will.
Okay.
I think I will. At this point, I want to see what they want to do. I think I'm expecting it not to be fantastic. I don't love that Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah.
I don't love that Trevorrow is coming back. I'm like 50-50 on him. He wrote the script for both Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom. And there are elements that I really like, and there's stuff I just hate. So I anticipate that it's not going to be fantastic. He does have a co-writer on the script, a new co-writer. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a female co-writer, which I think we literally have never had a Jurassic Park film written by a woman. So that will be interesting. And he has also said that he's specifically done with the scientific, like Frankenstein monsters, that we're going back to dinosaurs. So I would think because of where we're at the film, we're looking at like, well, let's examine like what the world has now become a somewhat prehistoric world again, or at least one that has these creatures in it. How does humankind adapt to that? How does our world change? I do not know what story they're going to tell.
Yeah,
with that,
I don't either. You could go like really, really bonkers and like start doing Planet of the Apes style stuff.
Right.
You could,
but civilization wouldn't crumble,
I know,
right?
I know.
Like,
Although I do have to say that wasn't the only plot that we were left with at the end of the film, because we also did see the trucks rolling out to other locations with the weaponized dinosaurs. So
maybe like America has to hunt down our dinosaurs to weaponize them too.
Well, yeah, I guess it could be
like Dino Riders.
Yeah.
So I saw that in the comments. But you know what, honestly, I don't know that the execution will be great, but those are at least interesting concepts. If we're talking about like, let's examine how does the world change? How does like average day for an American change if there are dinosaurs in the environment now? Do we build structures around our cities? Do we learn to live with them?
It's like 20 dinosaurs, right? I feel like in the world of the movie, I feel like you hunted down 20 dinosaurs before many, many, many times. You can hunt them down again.
Well, I think they would be benefited off of going smaller than bigger. They're going to this big place where it's like, oh, the world has become a Jurassic World, and it's almost like it would be more interesting if it was like, what if there was some sort of
or something?
Well, even I would like go like, what if only a few what if only a few dinosaurs escaped? Maybe even just Blue, and then it's like Owen and Claire have like a responsibility to be like, what do we do? Like, someone's going to hurt this dinosaur that we care about. We need to find it and like take it somewhere else, or we need to. Maybe it's all about them trying to get legislation for like protection for. I don't know. There's many things that I would find more interesting. I think that everyone else would be like, that's boring.
As we're talking about this, I think about why we might never be able to get to the same feeling of the first one before, and why like something like Logan came to mind, where there really is no way to make it intimate again because the entire world knows about this. I think what was so great about Jurassic Park is the first one is you felt like you were on some secret adventure with the only 5 people that knew about this.
That was very
no
cool
one's going to know about it again.
Yeah.
And that created a sense of mystery that I feel like now when I think of, okay, what if it's about some campers in the Pacific Northwest and like a couple of velociraptors are up there and now try to hunt them down, and what if the movie is just about that? But again, I don't think there's a sense of mystery because we all know there's dinosaurs out there. We've seen them on cameras, we've seen them in the press. I don't know how to make it feel special again, or how to make them feel special again in the wild.
Yeah. Well, as we do at the end of all of our Fanbase Feature panel discussions, I want to pose to each of you if there are listeners out there either that were unhappy with Jurassic World and were looking for something greater or more from the film, who love dinosaurs and want to experience more of this, or if there are people out there who like the film and just want to see more of what they already saw. Are there any other entertainment medium examples, whether it be film, TV, comics, novels, etc., that you would recommend to people to check out, whether they are looking for more positively or negatively after this film? Bryant, we'll start with you.
I would just go back to the source, honestly. I would say, like, if you have never read either Jurassic Park or The Lost World by Michael Crichton, they're going to provide a lot for you that hasn't been mined by these films and is a little more cerebral and engaging. The same I would say about Topps comics from the 90s, specifically There's a 2-part series called Raptor that deals with a mercenary essentially coming back while they're trying to rebuild Jurassic Park after the first movie. And, Grant and Ellie are there and helping advise, and they get pulled into this thing where these raptors are being kidnapped, eventually end up in the hands of an infamous Colombian drug lord who trains them as like attack dogs essentially, and then they obviously escape him eventually, and it's a continued chase, and it is more intimate of like we're trying to get these raptors before they commit some real harm in the real world that still doesn't know about them. So I would recommend those. That would be Raptors Attack, and Raptors Hijack, which you will really have to search to find. They're hard to find. Maybe you can find them digitally.
Ani, what about you?
This might seem a little cheesy and obvious, but just a couple of years ago I rebought a copy of Dinotopia, and when we were talking about like dinosaurs assimilating with humans or vice versa, it made me think of that. That
Sure.
somehow still, I mean, obviously the Jurassic Park movies shouldn't go in that direction.
It's a little more fantastical.
Where there's like a medieval land where dinosaurs
are citizens.
Yes, but there is in that book still a sense of dinosaurs as animals, creative ways to interact with them and creative ways to engage with them, and there is a sense of mystery as the people who are exploring that world get to discover, and you get to play with them a little bit in your mind about how you might want to interact with dinosaurs rather than just dinosaurs chasing you down and hunting you.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Ani and Bryant, thank you for chatting with me about not only Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but the Jurassic Park franchise as a whole. It is always fascinating to chat with you both about dinosaurs. So
Always a
Thank
pleasure.
thank you, guys. You can find more Fanbase Feature panel discussions like this one by subscribing to the Fanbase Weekly iTunes channel or by going over to fanbasepress.com and checking out the episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in to this discussion, and we hope to hear from you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
This has been part of the Fanbase Press Podcast Network.